Bom dia, bem-vindos ao webinar sobre o mercado da China. O meu nome é Joana Afonso e sou gestora de projetos da aceleradora do Instituto Pedro Nunes. Estamos a organizar esta sessão, uma vez que a internacionalização é um passo estratégico e crucial para o crescimento e para o desenvolvimento das empresas de base tecnológica e para a economia nacional. O IPN está a dinamizar o projeto Pro Global, um programa de aceleração para a internacionalização, que pretende acelerar a internacionalização das empresas de base tecnológica e inovadoras, nomeadamente apoiando a sua estratégia de internacionalização, alargando as suas redes de contacto e identificando oportunidades de negócio nos diferentes mercados externos. Ao abrigo deste projeto, financiado pelo PRR, Plano de Recuperação e Resiliência Português, o Instituto Pedro Nunes está então a dinamizar uma série de webinars dedicados a diversos mercados externos. Hoje dedicamos esta sessão ao mercado da China e vamos conhecer um pouco mais sobre este mercado, como se realizam negócios e que iniciativas, projetos e incentivos estão disponíveis neste mercado para as startups. A sessão de hoje será conduzida por Luís Costa, representante local da ICEP em Xangai, e por Alessio Pettino, da EU SME Center, uma iniciativa da União Europeia que oferece aconselhamento, formação e outros serviços às PME europeias sobre a China. No final das intervenções, teremos um momento para perguntas e respostas, pelo que eu convido desde já todos os participantes a utilizar o canal dos comentários para colocarem as vossas questões. Vamos então começar desde já com a apresentação por parte da ICEP. Dr. Luís, a palavra é sua. Obrigada.
Muito obrigado, Joana. Bom dia a todos. É um prazer estar aqui. Agradeço ao IPN o convite para falar aqui um pouco sobre o mercado da China, com particular incidência sobre a região de Xangai, que é sob a atual jurisdição da ICEP Xangai. Começava aqui talvez com umas palavras iniciais sobre a China. A China é a segunda maior economia mundial, como todos sabemos, tem um PIB nominal apenas ultrapassado pelos Estados Unidos da América e com um PIB per capita de cerca de 12.700 USD dólares em 2023, com uma população de 1,4 mil milhões de habitantes. É um país que desempenha atualmente um papel fundamental no panorama económico e financeiro mundial, tem uma grande representação em termos de motor da economia mundial, ou seja, um pequeno impacto na China sente-se agora atualmente em todas as economias mundiais. E embora este país seja, pelo menos do lado português, frequentemente descrito como um fornecedor, como um país de fornecimento, é possível fazer o caminho inverso, é possível exportar para a China e tal pode significar a entrada de mais empresas portuguesas em setores mais diversificados num mercado que tem realmente enorme potencial. Portanto, eu dividiria a minha apresentação em 5 momentos. Primeiro, uma breve descrição sobre o mercado da China. Em segundo tópico, uma análise à cultura de negócios, as disparidades que existem entre o mundo oriental e o mundo ocidental. Em terceiro lugar, aqui uma introdução do ecossistema de startups da China, com análise também às discrepâncias regionais. Muito importante, a China é um país composto por províncias que são muito orgulhosas, muito dinâmicas, muito diferentes entre si, tanto em aspectos socioeconómicos, culturais, financeiros, etc. E, finalmente, uma breve passagem pela pauta regulatória que define este país, altamente complexa, mas poderá ser simplificada. Em termos macroeconómicos, em 2023 verificou-se um crescimento do PIB de 5,2%. Para o atual ano, prevê-se que a economia chinesa cresça 4,8%, é um pouco abaixo da taxa definida pelo governo chinês de 5%. O consumo privado continuará, perspectiva-se, a ser o principal impulsionador da economia em 2024, contudo com uma taxa de crescimento muito menor do que a registrada em 2023. E aqui por baixo vemos uma das principais questões que afeta a China, que é o envelhecimento, afeta a economia chinesa, afeta a economia japonesa e coreana. Até o final de 2030, estima-se que a idade média na China atinge os 50 anos. Uma taxa de entre 15 e 59 anos de 63,5% da população. É uma economia em vias de envelhecimento e as políticas governamentais eventualmente redirigir-se-ão para abordar essa questão. Em termos de performance comercial, como vemos aqui no gráfico do meio, as importações da China atingiram 2,5 mil milhões de dólares em 2023, um pequeno decréscimo comparativamente a 2022, com alta dependência de máquinas e aparelhos e com mercados principais fornecedores como a região de Taiwan, os Estados Unidos, Coreia do Sul e Japão e Austrália, que em conjunto representam cerca de 1/3 das importações. Como seria de esperar, a China exporta mais do que aquilo que importa, exporta cerca de 30% mais do que importa, tem uma taxa de cobertura de 132%, mas realmente este excedente comercial também mostra aqui alguns sinais de decréscimo. Esta taxa de cobertura decresceu 0,2%, quer dizer que não é tanto pelo aumento das importações, é mais pelo decréscimo das exportações e a intenção governamental de diversificar os mercados de exportação. Em termos mais aqui de bullet points para sintetizar a economia da China, o forte crescimento da China tem sido desde a introdução da China ao OMC em 2001, tem registrado taxas de crescimento a duplos dígitos, entre 9% e 10% no mínimo. Atualmente, esta abordagem, esta performance já não se verifica, sobretudo desde o período pandémico. E este desempenho tem atingido os seus limites e tem conduzido a desequilíbrios sociais, económicos e ambientais que acabam por afetar e acabam também por redirecionar as políticas governamentais em direção a novas prioridades, como, por exemplo, a renovação do modelo económico de crescimento, o envelhecimento rápido, a criação do sistema de saúde eficaz e uma via energética com menores emissões de gases de carbono. E todos estes desafios são partilhados pela China, mas são partilhados pelo mundo todo. E a China aqui serve como uma ponta da lança na criação, na inovação de respostas para estes problemas. Também dependerá, como seria, a China é um mercado altamente dependente da estrutura governamental. Dependerá, então, o crescimento económico dos investimentos públicos, cada vez mais financiados pelo Governo Central. E esta questão do setor imobiliário acaba por ser muito importante. Nós, sobretudo desde 2022, temos visto notícias sobre a falência de grandes grupos como a Evergrande, que necessitam resgates financeiros. O governo chinês cada vez menos tem paciência para continuar a sustentar este setor. Contudo, vemos mais recentemente uma estabilidade do setor imobiliário e o impacto deste setor imobiliário na economia é elevado, portanto, acabará por também estabilizar a performance económica da China. Apesar do abrandamento, apesar destes 4,8% que até podem ser vistos como desapontantes, mas aqui é necessário terem atenção à questão da escala. 4,8% de uma economia com a escala da China poderá parecer pouco, mas é pouco, é um termo muito leigo de descrever esta performance. Os especialistas antecipam que a economia chinesa irá convergir, ou poderá acabar por convergir com a dos Estados Unidos em termos de dimensão do PIB até meados da década de 2030. Não poderia negligenciar uma breve palavra relativamente ao e-commerce. 37% das despesas a retalho na China provém dos canais online. A China tem uma elevada taxa de penetração da internet. É muito comum em zonas rurais encontrarmos pessoas com baixos níveis de educação, mas com acesso a um smartphone, acesso a redes 5G. Um turnover total de 500 mil milhões de dólares em cross-border e-commerce com origem na China, de acordo com o HSBC. 6 em cada 10 chineses preferem adquirir os seus produtos online. Cerca de 904 milhões de pessoas haviam adquirido bens online em junho de 2024. E aqui há também uma questão muito importante, 3 tópicos em particular. O primeiro lugar é, as datas que são polos de atração para o e-commerce aqui na China. Nós estamos perto de uma. 11 de novembro celebra-se o Singles Day e as plataformas de e-commerce que vemos aqui à direita redirecionam também as suas épocas de saldos, as suas ofertas e as suas campanhas digitais em direção a isso. Até cerca de 70% das vendas de muitas empresas decorrem nesta altura. O segundo é a questão do live streaming. Olhando aqui para as principais plataformas de e-commerce, JD, Alibaba, Pinduoduo, Douyin, Xiaohongshu. Douyin é o equivalente ao TikTok, Xiaohongshu é uma rede social chinesa. Tanto o Douyin como o Xiaohongshu são plataformas de live streaming. Ou seja, aqui acaba por ser criada uma experiência. O consumidor chinês não pretende apenas adquirir, pretende também ter uma experiência enquanto adquire. Portanto, estas duas plataformas acabaram por redirecionar os seus modelos de negócio para incluir uma vertente de live streaming com e-commerce. Existe um KOL que não só descreve os produtos, como também disponibiliza os canais para venda. E, de facto, é possível concordar aqui com esta frase de Alex Yao, da JP Morgan, que ele diz que realmente e-commerce na China já não é uma tendência. Talvez há 5, 10 anos atrás pudéssemos falar de tendência. Atualmente, o e-commerce até retira vendas a retalho dos canais offline. Particularmente importante porque continuará em crescimento e estima-se que à medida que a urbanização, as taxas de urbanização na China também crescem, sobretudo nos polos metropolitanos, que eu falarei daqui a pouco, que estas plataformas de e-commerce ganhem cada vez mais relevo. Entre Portugal e a China, aqui à esquerda vemos aqui as principais categorias: pastas celulósicas e papel, metais comuns, máquinas e aparelhos, minerais e minérios, produtos agrícolas. A China foi o 16º cliente das exportações portuguesas de bens em 2023, com uma cota de cerca de 1%, é o 5º principal fornecedor. Vemos nos últimos 4, 5 anos uma taxa de crescimento anual à volta dos 7% para as exportações, 17% nas importações. De facto, existe aqui ainda um elevado déficit comercial sentido por Portugal junto da China. A China é, como mencionei no início, ainda um mercado de fornecimento, mas gradualmente vemos este déficit comercial a decrescer. A China também, no panorama global, tem vindo a reforçar a sua posição enquanto fornecedor de produtos de elevado valor acrescentado, como os automóveis elétricos, autocarros elétricos, painéis fotovoltaicos, material ferroviário. Vemos nas notícias também os autocarros da Yantong Bus, os automóveis da BYD que chegaram a Portugal e que têm recebido relativo sucesso. Não obstante, a China continuará a apresentar potencial para absorver mais produtos portugueses, também em setores diversificados, não necessariamente nos tradicionais, não só nestes que estão aqui à esquerda, em outras áreas, mas exige esforço, exige paciência e exige muito investimento, não necessariamente apenas em termos financeiros, mas também em termos de custos de oportunidade, tempo, sobretudo. A China também, tendo essa possibilidade, celebrou vários acordos de comércio livre. Aconselho que, pelo menos, se familiarizem, tanto aqui com os parceiros asiáticos, mas também com a Austrália, Chile, Nova Zelândia, etc. Naturalmente, sendo a China um mercado terceiro, ou seja, não pertence à União Europeia, não é um mercado comunitário, as regras, os regulamentos de importação são muito específicos, podem vir a ser muito burocráticos. Portanto, nós aconselhamos sempre que visitem a plataforma Access to Markets através do HS Code do vosso produto, do vosso serviço, neste caso, para saber qual é as especificidades para esta exportação. O que é necessário saber antes de começarem a exportar? Por exemplo, no setor agroalimentar, é preciso ver, a China, como Portugal, tem protocolos de exportação delineados em certas categorias de produto, mas não em todos. Portanto, é preciso estar familiarizado com isso. Com a União Europeia, apenas uma breve menção, analisando aqui este gráfico, podemos ver uma relativa estabilidade nas importações da China com origem na União Europeia desde 2021 até 2023, sobretudo em produtos agrícolas e de máquinas. No sentido inverso, a China, as importações da União Europeia com origem na China atingiram um pico à volta do terceiro trimestre de 2022 e desde então tem notado uma tendência relativa decrescente. Para tal, não contribui as investigações anti-dumping em curso, as preocupações que possam existir em transferências de tecnologias e de dados. Analisando aqui um pouco o ambiente de negócios, é natural para uma empresa portuguesa que aborda o mercado da China pela primeira vez não compreender qual é a maneira chinesa de fazer negócios. Eles têm uma matriz filosófica, religiosa e política muito diferente, até porque, pronto, política, nós sabemos a questão a China tem um sistema unipartidário. Em termos religiosos, não existe uma religião oficial, existe muita influência confucionista. No contexto empresarial chinês, é atribuída grande relevância ao relacionamento interpessoal. Isto é muito importante. Já irei entrar mais em detalhe, mas as relações que são estabelecidas com as contrapartes chinesas normalmente são a pedra basilar para qualquer negócio que venha a ser desenvolvido. É atribuída importância extrema à diferença de idades. Isto é um conceito talvez mais asiático, mas aqui há rede de contactos. Não interessa quem és, interessa quem tu conheces. E ao grau hierárquico que cada um assume na organização. Isto contribui para criar uma relação de respeito. Trata-se de uma cultura em que muitos conceitos são implícitos. Não são mencionados. Podem estar numa conversa com uma contraparte chinesa, com um potencial comprador, distribuidor, investidor, e os termos de negócio talvez não sejam necessariamente mencionados, mas são implícitos. É aqui o predomínio da linguagem silenciosa. Fica um pouco difícil de compreender muitas vezes o que querem dizer e pode até vir a ser frustrante, mas após este período de adaptação conseguem ter esta ultrapassagem da barreira cultural. A negociação é comum e esperada, raramente é aceita a primeira proposta, e a cultura é geralmente aversa ao risco, com gradual adoção de mudança. E eu coloquei aqui, exceto certos casos, porque nós vemos realmente, por exemplo, na adoção de automóveis elétricos, Xangai viu uma rápida transição nessa vertente. No e-payment, a utilização de aplicações como o WeChat ou Alipay foi muito rapidamente adotada de forma nacional. Portanto, em certos casos, a China consegue adoptar, sobretudo quando existe elevado investimento estatal nessa direção. Outras recomendações. A China, apesar de ter um termo para não, eles evitam utilizá-lo. Assinar o contrato significa apenas que se estabeleceu um primeiro relacionamento. E as verdadeiras negociações irão seguir-se. E muitas das vezes, estas negociações só decorrem em momentos que para nós são considerados informais, como jantares, como almoços, como as saídas para um copo ou para o que for. Ou seja, esse é realmente aqui na China onde decorrem as verdadeiras negociações e às vezes os acordos são detalhados nesses momentos. As visitas mútuas em Portugal e a China são muito importantes. A apresentação das famílias, longas refeições, trocas de presente, momentos de entretenimento, ou seja, não necessariamente apenas negócio. A China valoriza altamente todo o momento paralelo que acontece ao negócio. Se viajar para a China, não viaje sozinho, faça-se acompanhar. Todos os aspectos de uma reunião, isto pode deixar às vezes os contrapartes portugueses desconfortáveis, mas são geralmente controlados pelos chineses. Outra questão muito importante, a fluência no mandarim. Se não é fluente em mandarim, recorra a um tradutor. Os chineses não discriminam por isso mesmo. Existe realmente aqui, desde o período pandémico, uma certa depreciação do nível falado em inglês, sobretudo em cidades de segunda e terceira linha. É muito mais comum encontrar-se alguém que fala inglês em Xangai, ou em Pequim, ou em Shenzhen, do que necessariamente numa capital de província ou numa cidade periférica. Obviamente, é necessário estar bem preparado para negociar com o interlocutor chinês, ter toda a informação que é útil em língua inglesa, no mínimo, com materiais traduzidos para chinês, idealmente. E trocar cartões de visita é usual. Eu gostaria de dizer que isto ainda é verdade, mas eu acho que cada vez mais a China tem-se dirigido para a utilização, para a troca de contactos através da aplicação WeChat, que eu recomendo, antes de virem para a China, instalem o WeChat e o Alipay. São duas ferramentas indispensáveis e altamente valorizadas. Não é esperado pela parte chinesa que o estrangeiro, que nós, como empresário português, tenham um WeChat, mas se tiver, é uns pontos a favor que ganha junto da contraparte chinesa. Dois termos muito importantes que eu acho que merecem particular destaque: Guanxi e Mianza. O Guanxi, lá está, é esta rede de relações indispensáveis ao funcionamento social. Não é quem és, é quem conheces. Se lhe dão um presente, deve retribuir. Se o convidam para um evento ou se convidam para visitar a fábrica, deve fazer o mesmo. Aqui está, se pedir um favor, existe aqui uma obrigação. Muitas vezes os chineses até proativamente criam esta obrigação, oferecem algo com a expectativa de que venha a ser retribuído. É cultural, pode ser visto, lá está, no mundo ocidental como aqui algum jogo de interesses, até pode vir a ser, mas está implementado. Ambos são conceitos confucionistas, ou seja, já provém são conceitos seculares, portanto não é algo que irá mudar, digamos, no futuro próximo. O Mianzi, traduzido literalmente, é a face, é a preocupação em não perder a face. Quem faz perder a face a um chinês também não fica melhor. Ou seja, nunca critique, nunca utilize expressões em público que sejam consideradas agressivas. Isto é muito importante. Para um chinês é muito importante a imagem que possui junto do público em geral. Em termos do ecossistema chinês de startups, vemos aqui alguns números: 26 mil milhões de dólares angariados por startups na China, 1.202 startups criadas em 2023, comparadas com 51 mil em 2018. Isto é um decréscimo muito considerável. 2018, de facto, foi o auge, já iremos ao gráfico aqui à direita. Foram alcançados 1.024 acordos de funding em 2023, com um average de 32,1 milhões de dólares. É um decréscimo neste valor em 16% comparado ao ano anterior. Em early stage, foram alcançados 2,5 mil milhões de dólares no segundo trimestre de 2024. É um decréscimo de 13% nas growth rounds. Foram realizadas 903 growth rounds so far até 2024 e foram adquiridas 61 empresas na China entre janeiro e outubro de 2024. E, de facto, se forem pesquisar, agora, à altura, outubro de 2024, se forem pesquisar China Startup Ecosystem no Google, irão encontrar inúmeros artigos que são spin-offs deste do Financial Times e que mencionam que o ecossistema chinês de startups está morto. Eu discordo, eu acho que talvez a proatividade, o empreendedorismo possa estar numa fase mais conservadora e isso tem, de facto, efeitos negativos no Venture Capital Investment, mas eu aqui concordaria que realmente 2018 foi um ano de extrema preponderância no ecossistema de startups e vemos aqui realmente um impacto muito significativo na criação de startups desde 2018. Em termos de setores a destacar, destacaria estes 6. A inteligência artificial é uma prioridade estratégica definida pelo governo chinês no 14º e será, de certo, no 15º, em 2025. Temos visto elevado investimento em investigação e desenvolvimento na implementação deste setor, nomeadamente em veículos autónomos, na robótica, Internet of Things e Healthcare. Em termos de energias renováveis, a China é o maior produtor mundial de painéis solares e turbinas eólicas. Fintech, falei um pouco do Alipay e do WeChat Pay, os pagamentos via smartphone, a criação do RMB digital. Em termos de EVs, dos veículos elétricos, temos visto realmente um enorme impulso governamental para a adoção de veículos elétricos através de subsídios atribuídos aos consumidores, aos compradores desta categoria de produto, as reduções de impostos implementados e a facilitação na obtenção da matrícula. Aqui na China é relativamente simples adquirir um veículo, mas adquirir uma matrícula, por norma, é através de um concurso e através de um leilão. Isto dificulta que o consumidor normal tenha acesso a uma matrícula. Isto também é para controlar o número de carros que estão em circulação em certo momento. O mercado chinês corresponde a 40% da produção mundial das vendas globais de veículos elétricos. Em termos de drones, a China mundial, a líder mundial na produção de drones, sobretudo através da DJI, que domina o mercado, tem cerca de 70% da cota global. E no metaverso. O metaverso foi a principal tendência das startups na China em 2021. Devo também mencionar que a China é um país altamente regionalizado, ou seja, nós temos regiões costeiras e grandes metrópoles, estas 4, Pequim, Shenzhen, Xangai, Cantão, adicionaria talvez Chongqing, o município de Chongqing, que se encontram muito mais desenvolvidas que as regiões periféricas. São cidades consideradas Tier 1 Plus, com a performance assinalável em termos económicos, infraestruturas, a população com maior poder de compra, vemos realmente elevadas disparidades socioeconómicas, com muito maior influência política e cultural no país. E este gráfico aqui à direita, partilhado pela startup Genome, realmente ilustra aqui uma outra realidade do Financial Times. Podemos ver em várias métricas, performance, funding, conectividade, estes ecossistemas, Pequim, Xangai, Shenzhen e Hangzhou, estão muito bem posicionados. Ou seja, os hubs existem. Têm as condições adequadas para a incubação e aceleração de startups. Apenas a proatividade e o VC funding é que têm decrescido. Xangai, sendo o diretor da ICEP Xangai, permita-me dedicar aqui alguns slides apenas a Xangai, aqui à região, a este município. Temos 32 medidas para orientar o capital de risco e investimento em tecnologia de pequena escala e em fase inicial. Xangai é a capital financeira, económica e comercial da China, tem algumas das melhores infraestruturas financeiras do mundo. Tem também o porto mais movimentado do mundo em termos de TEUs. Em termos de distribuição de bens de consumo importados na China, existiu um aumento de 3,6% no volume de contentores em 2023. E em termos de setores de destaque, listei aqui alguns, ciências de saúde, AI, Big Data e Gaming. Por exemplo, aqui em termos de Gaming, a Xangai é a casa para o China Joy, que é um dos eventos, uma das feiras comerciais mais movimentadas do mundo. Xangai, portanto, pretende reforçar a sua posição no domínio de tecnologia e inovação, enquanto mantém a sua reputação enquanto um dos principais centros financeiros. O turnover do ecossistema, como vemos aqui, é muito mais elevado do que a média global. Xangai conta com 23 unicórnios, contou com 51 mil milhões em VC funding em 2023, mas, talvez por termos mais negativos, a diferença de valor desde o início até o fim do processo de incubação é 1%, o value growth. Demora 11 anos a uma empresa a sair do ecossistema e cada vez menos vemos empresas a sair. Pronto, isto tem uma relação talvez direta com a questão do empreendedorismo que vimos anteriormente. Em termos de cidades que são consideradas Tier 1 ou Tier 1 Plus, temos 4 cidades Tier 1, Pequim, Xangai, Cantão e Shenzhen. Temos 15 chamadas New Tier 1, que são estas, Chengdu, Chongqing, Ningbo, etc. 30 Tier 2 e 71 Tier 3. Porquê que este Tier System é importante? É um sistema informal, mas ajuda a compreender as disparidades regionais e económicas que existem entre a China, sobretudo na zona costeira. Xangai, Cantão e Shenzhen situam-se na costa, enquanto Pequim situa-se ligeiramente mais para o interior. Vemos aqui também à esquerda alguns dos principais setores. Estes são setores de acordo com a prioridade governamental. As prioridades de desenvolvimento destas cidades, Tier 1, abrangem todos os setores ou tecnologias. O que mudam são sim as estratégias governamentais. Para Xangai, a prioridade talvez passará realmente mais pelos setores que eu mencionei anteriormente, sobretudo na questão da biomedicina. Shenzhen apostará mais em vertentes, o governo apostará mais em vertentes tecnológicas, tal como Cantão. Em termos de startups, Pequim ocupa a primeira posição nacional, tem cerca de mais de 20 mil startups em comparação com Xangai e 50 mil com Shenzhen. É um ecossistema mais estabelecido, mais veterano em comparação com Shenzhen e Guangzhou, talvez similar ao de Xangai. Aqui alguns nomes, unicórnios com origem na China, nomes familiares, Shein, Cainiao, DJI, que foi falado anteriormente, Xiaohongshu, Ant Group, a Oppo, a ByteDance. Em termos de Venture Capitals, aqui listei também algumas. A China ocupa a 13ª posição no Global Startup Index em 2024. No entanto, e isto é muito importante, o governo chinês apresenta-se como o principal investidor em termos de Venture Capital ou Private Equity e investe 6 vezes mais do que os investidores privados. E vemos realmente aqui, neste gráfico aqui no canto inferior direito, os setores, em considerável proporção dos setores, vemos um domínio dos State-Linked Investors. Ou seja, uma startup portuguesa não pode esperar apenas negociar, ou não pode estar à espera que irá negociar apenas com fundos ou investidores privados. Eventualmente terá que lidar com as entidades governamentais. Não poderia também passar sem falar do Protecting. O Protecting é um programa de incubação e inovação realizado, originalmente introduzido pelo grupo Fosun, um grupo chinês, que tem participação no grupo Fidelidade e Luxude. Eles anualmente, ou pronto, com cadência anual, abrem este concurso para as startups portuguesas se candidatarem, que inclui uma vertente também na China, um roadshow, uma realização de redes de contactos na China, dentro de investidores, potenciais clientes, potenciais fornecedores, se for o caso. Portanto, é um programa que não tem custos para as empresas e, como vemos aqui a meio, esta foi a edição atual. Nós contamos com 3 startups portuguesas no setor de Health Tech e a ICEP Xangai tem vindo a acompanhar e apoiar estas empresas e todas as startups que fazem parte deste programa realizado pela Fosun. Em termos de regulamentação, não irei estender-me de forma muito alargada. Diria que sim, um parceiro local. A China é um mercado muito complexo em termos burocráticos. A proximidade geográfica dos centros de decisão é um fator decisivo para startups que desejem abordar este mercado. É recomendável o recurso a um parceiro local, familiarizado com as exigências deste país e com os constrangimentos legais. Podemos falar também em que formatos é que uma empresa pode ter quando abre aqui uma sucursal, uma filial, uma representação. O acesso a financiamento, esta proximidade geográfica facilita, sobretudo em termos de plataformas dedicadas à angariação de investimento de capital, apoios governamentais, os concursos que existem que são lançados pelo governo chinês. Pronto, o registro fiscal importante, formalidades de documentação, tradução, reconhecimento notarial extremamente importantes. Portanto, é preciso estar familiarizado com tudo isto. Muitas vezes é um processo altamente burocrático, complexo. Portanto, nós recomendamos sempre: contactem um parceiro local, tirem as vossas dúvidas, tirem as vossas questões, façam as perguntas que tiverem a ser necessárias, de facto, se quiserem estar presentes neste mercado. E seria isto da minha parte. Deixo aqui o meu contacto. Com todo o gosto entrarei em contacto convosco, se for necessário, para questões que possam vir a ter. Disponibilizo os serviços da ICEP para que for necessário. Nós temos mais outras 2 delegações na China, uma na China continental em Pequim e outra em Macau, que também fazem este acompanhamento. Portanto, muito obrigado e uma ótima sessão a todos.
Muito obrigada pela excelente apresentação. Vamos passar desde já então agora à apresentação do EU SME Center. Alexia, thank you so much. I will pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Joanna. Good morning, everybody. It is a great pleasure to be here today and to give a presentation, a little bit overview of how China works, building on what Luis has just mentioned. So maybe a very brief introduction about myself. I work as a business advisor at the USME Center, which is a project funded by the European Union that helps European small and medium companies to get to know China, to understand how China works, and to help these companies get prepared basically for China, how to minimize risks. We do so. We have different services. I would like to highlight that all of them are totally free because these are paid by the EU basically. So any services and interactions you will have with us will be totally on a free of charge and a confidential basis. So if you have any questions, of course there will be Q&A later, but also in the next days, in the next weeks, if you have questions, you are very welcome to reach out to us. So today I'm going to focus on 3 main points. The first one will be a general overview of where we see how we see the Chinese market going, but also the challenges that we hear from European small and medium companies that engage with us. I will then, in the second part, I will be a bit more detailed about different aspects of how the Chinese market works, and the last part will be a bit some takeaways and some indications on how you can use our services. So I always like to start these kind of presentations by reminding everybody that China is actually a mixed economy. It has a mixed system. You have the market, of course, you have the private companies, but you have a lot of planning. You have a lot of government planning, you have a lot of industrial policy. So this means that many of the needs of the market, many of the priorities of the market are actually explicitly written in some 5-year plans, in some of the documents. And this means that if you read these documents, you get an idea of what is needed. And sometimes these documents are also very specific. It's not just broad like AI or semiconductors, but sometimes they're very, very explicit and specific about the specific technology or niche that they're looking for. Then I don't know, maybe if you read newspapers, there is a lot of, let's say, news about the Chinese economy slowing. Some are very pessimistic. Some say there's a crisis. Indeed, the economy is not as good as it used to be. Many consumers are saving money because they're not as optimistic as before, but it's not that catastrophic as some media maybe might portray. It is growing at a slower pace, but it's still growing, and it's just that it's not as let's say optimistic as before. But the economy is there. People are still going out and spending. In terms of some let's say directions where we see where China is heading. We see a lot of very intense regulatory activity across many sectors. This means that many things are becoming a bit more clear than before. Many gray areas. Of course, there are still many gray areas, but overall, we see more clarity. There is also, of course, a lot of focus on green. Everything that is green that helps the country achieve its carbon emissions reduction targets is welcome overall. And then there is also, let's say, more awareness and determination to focus on science, technology, and innovation as key drivers of growth, rather than traditional growth drivers such as natural resources or real estate. Of course, those are still very much present and very much important, but at least the awareness of the role of science, technology, innovation is very strong and will become even stronger in the next years. So about startups, also Luis just mentioned the Startup Genome report. Indeed, Beijing and Shanghai rank very highly in this report. I would also like to say that until a couple of years ago, I think, or 3 years ago, Beijing was fourth in the world. Now it's eighth. It decreased. There are many reasons for this. The impact of COVID, the closure of the market, of course, is now it's open again, but it had a profound impact. Internet regulations, I'm not going to be very detailed about this in my presentation, but there are a lot of, let's say, restrictions, regulations about the internet, about the connectivity, about software. So these have an impact on some of these indicators. Shenzhen is also it ranks a bit lower in the list, but it's still, sometimes it's defined as the Silicon Valley of China. Sometimes Beijing is defined as the Silicon Valley of China. There are many Silicon Valleys in China, apparently. But in any case, Shenzhen is a very vibrant, it has a very vibrant startup ecosystem, especially for ICT, hardware. But I would like to say that it's not just these three cities. As Luis mentioned, in Europe, we tend to think about China as Shanghai, Shenzhen, Beijing, but there are many other realities less known, like Chengdu, Chongqing, but also others such as Hefei, which also have a lot of opportunities. And actually, each of these cities might focus on different segments, on different technologies. So it's very important for you to identify which city has the kind of ecosystem that suits that is in line with your solutions. So since the end of all the COVID restrictions last year, we see a charm offensive for an investment. I would say that there are two aspects here. There is any investment that, of course, is big in terms of numbers, but so it's not your case, is welcome. But also investment that brings very innovative products, innovative solutions, or brings some R&D. This is also very welcome, including in big cities such as Beijing, Shanghai, and so on. If it's not a particularly, let's say, advanced investment, but it's more a kind of traditional industry, in my opinion, we see more opportunities in lower tier cities, and not Shanghai, Shenzhen, because these are market in the cities is pretty saturated for many sectors. We also see a lot of let's say momentum for Chinese investment in Europe, also as a way to overcome potential trade restrictions. But this could also have some opportunities for you if you have let's say a company investing in your startup. They might open the Chinese market to you, basically. So, of course, there are a lot of implications in terms of technology transfer, governance structure, but it also might also have some benefits. Then we see many companies going to China still, but it's very hard now to be successful. You really need to have a very strong business case. You really need to provide a very innovative solution, which is not available in the market. And you must be present on the ground, no matter what, maybe even if it's not yourself, but a partner, somebody on the ground, or going there very frequently. It's very important. And last, I would like to say that the overall context it's changing a lot, including in the EU. There are some trade frictions which might impact the overall relations in the future. In terms of challenges, we see, I mentioned, there are many companies that interact with us. We have, over our project has been operating for 14 years. We have engaged with thousands of SMEs. So we built some knowledge about what are common issues and common challenges they face. The first, I would say, is lack of appropriate knowledge of how China works, the regulations, but also preparation, commitment. Sometimes many companies take China as a side project, something that you do like on the sidelines of your main business. This is a very wrong approach. China is a very time consuming. It must be a full-time kind of project, and you have to have dedicated resources for it. Working with the wrong partners, of course, is a very important one. Sometimes you have some agreements, could be supply agreements, but also product development agreements. If the partner doesn't perform as expected and it's a kind of exclusive relationship, it might be very hard to get out of this relationship, in a safe way. There are many cultural factors, of course, the language, but I would also like to say the way of working within a company, how decisions are made. China is pretty different from us. It's faster. So this will affect also, the relationship with, of course, your reaction to the Chinese market, to new developments, but also the way your interactions with your Chinese partners. Different role of government in business. This is maybe something we're not always used to in Europe, but in China, the government is very present everywhere, and not just in the negative sense, but also in the positive sense. They can also help you, especially the local administrations. They if you bring value to them, if you help them achieving some of the goals, they will support you, of course. But it's just that there might be a lot of red tape. You might need to do a lot of things which before actually doing what you want to do. There's some red tape. Also, we have the view that China is still a cheap place. It's very it's not it's very expensive. Also renting an office space or paying salaries of engineers, they're very high. I would say much higher than many European countries, probably also Portugal. So it's not cheap, especially cities such as Shanghai, Beijing. Maybe lower tier cities, it's still affordable, but of course you might not have the top talent, the top people working for you. There is a lot of local competition, of course, a lot of Chinese startups, very vibrant startups, and this there is a China speed, the so-called China speed. So everything in China happens very quickly, and you really have to be on top of ahead of this competition. So that's also why I think being on the ground is essential. There are unwritten barriers. A lot of things happen even though the laws don't say so. So this is might be difficult to adapt. In general, in our experience, entrepreneurs, China is not like the first choice for foreign entrepreneurs. Maybe there are other countries, but for some reasons, it could also be an interesting option. So this was a bit an overview of from our perspective of Chinese market. Now, being a bit more specific, of course, there are many ways to enter the Chinese market, like any other country. And it's very important to know all these ways, the pros and cons of each of these ways. You might also pursue two of these ways at the same time, not just one. So one doesn't exclude the other, but of course, you can, if you already have a product validated, you can, of course, work in the traditional way. You find an importer, you find a distributor, and you work in this way. I would say that this way is decreasing its importance. It's not as common as before. You can establish your own entity in China, and I will put more details on this. You can also do a project, an R&D project, and I will also in the next slide spend more time on this. But there are other companies which, of course, can license the technology, especially software. There are also companies that outsource product development, outsource even production, or maybe they have a product, they want to commercialize it, they want to have it at engineering scale, and they choose China for doing this, which it has advantages because it has it's good infrastructure of people, and last, as I mentioned, you can also have a Chinese investor in your company. It's a bit more tricky. It could have some negative implications, but it could also open many doors, as I mentioned before. Another interesting way which we hear sometimes is that many foreign companies actually go to China because some of their international clients went to China. So there was last month I was actually in China. I was in Suzhou, and there was this foreign company that went to China in 2004 because they were suppliers of another company from their own country, and this other company from their own country actually opened a production site in China. So this company also went to China with them, so they could continue being supplier for this other company in China as well. And this is a very interesting way. So if you already have some kind of international clients and you know they have China operations, maybe you can try to contact them and say, hey, maybe your Chinese operations also need our solutions. This is a very interesting one. You have to remember that fulfilling Chinese, European international standards might not be sufficient for having your product validated in the Chinese market. You will have to comply with Chinese laws, regulations, technical specification, and this has very big implications, especially in sectors such as ICT, hardware, anything that has radio transmissions, or manufacturing. You will not, the CE marking, for instance, will not be enough. So you will have to take this into account as well. And of course, you have financial resources must be. Of course, if you're a startup, it might be challenging to have financial resources. But many companies we hear from go to China, they expect to be profitable in 1 year, or that's very hard. So you should really have very solid, let's say, financial plan that covers your expenses. So I mentioned two. I mentioned among the options to enter the Chinese market, there are two on which I would like to spend some more time. The first one is to establish an entity. You can establish many types of entities. Some of them are more expensive than others. Some of them have some limits in terms of what activities you can do. There is no best option. It depends on many things. There are also some incubators, of course. There are also international incubators. There are also Chinese, purely Chinese incubators. These are interesting options because it's much cheaper. You don't need to rent an office, for instance, because to register a company you will need an office space. But if you're in an incubator, you don't need this. And we hear that in many international incubators, let's say the fees, international incubators in China, the fees to operate for 1 year, including company registration, some tax, some accounting, and some HR, the administrative fees are around 12, 13, 14, 15,000 renminbi, which is about, let's say, 2,000 plus euros just for the first year. Of course, not including any headcount, like HR cost, but only the admin stuff, like the accounting, the company incorporation, and the office. Maybe you have a desk. These are basic costs. There are also a lot of incentives, especially if you are a technology company or very high technology company. Many local governments will offer you free office space. They will offer you, exemption from taxes. They will offer all kinds of incentives. And this is true. We organized a business mission in China last month. We brought 9 European small companies that were interested in the Chinese market. There were also a few startups. And we met local administrations in Suzhou and Chengdu, and they were all very happy to say, I give you this, I give you that, as long as you come to my area. So be aware of this, and be aware that the local administrations will be very eager to let's say to have you in their jurisdictions, especially if you have very advanced, a very innovative solution, or you operate in a strategic sector, like the sectors that Luis mentioned before, for instance. Of course, in this way, there are some technology transfer implications, of course, that's how it works. So you have to have a very solid strategy on this. Second way I would like to mention is, which is often, which is not very common, but I think it has a very big potential. So it's to have a project, is to have a joint, could be an R&D project, could be a demonstration project, could be, you can also have some mobility. You exchange with students, with engineers. You can have projects like this, and there are two ways. I think at the EU level, there is Horizon Europe, of course. I believe most of you are very familiar. So you can, if you have already a sort of Chinese partner, you are willing to cooperate, you can first try to invite this Chinese partner as an associated partner in Horizon Europe. Of course, they will not get any EU money because they are a non-EU entity. They have to cover their own expenses, but they can participate in the project. So, and this form of cooperation is particularly encouraged in two main areas. The first is food, agriculture, and biotechnologies. And the second is climate change and biodiversity. So also pretty broad areas, and you can do a lot. If you see, now we expect the work program for the next few years of Horizon Europe to be published soon. In the work programs, especially for Cluster 5 and Cluster 6, if you're familiar with Horizon Europe, you will have all the topics, and many of these topics explicitly mention China. So go through these work programs and try to identify the topics, and then maybe try to involve to do a project on that. I would like to say that Chinese entities will need to cover their own expenses, as I mentioned, but sometimes they will be able to receive funding from their own Chinese administration. So. There is also the bilateral level. Portugal and China have joint calls bilaterally. Normally, these calls are launched every year or every 2 years. And of course, there are different priority sectors. Every year, they focus on different areas. I also know that there is a cooperation protocol between Portugal and China on marine sciences. So, everything that has to do with oceans or maybe marine energy and so on. And you see the last bullet point of this slide. There are the two bodies in Portugal which are responsible for this area. So if you're interested in this way of cooperation, get in touch with these two bodies, which will be able to provide more information. The second thing I would like to say is that, in our opinion, succeeding in Chinese market is extremely difficult. It requires a lot of time, a lot of resources. I like to say that, take the time and the resources that you need to go to any international market and then multiply by 3. And that's the result is what you need for China. Of course, it's a simplification, but it gives the idea that you should have a much longer term approach. You don't expect to become profitable in a few months, unless of course you are the next OpenAI but generally you should have very long term. And then of course you are a startup, so it's much harder for you. But even if you are a bigger company, when you go to China, you are still a startup. So it's very difficult. You have to build everything from scratch. Focus on one city only first. Many companies we see they go all in. They go everywhere in China. It's very wrong. I think just focus on one city, then maybe you build it from there. There are some knowledge gaps about Europe. There was this Italian company doing some air pollution treatment solutions. So they had a very cool solution funded by EIT Manufacturing, and a very cool solution. And the problem is that basically they had to install some modules on roofs of plants to basically capture emissions and clean them. So they were in discussion with a Chinese company for this cool solution, and the problem was that the Chinese company didn't like the shape, the aesthetics of this module, while the Italian company in this case saw no issues in it. So what I'm saying here is that don't expect that what works for us or what is beautiful for us or what is nice for us is the same, is perceived in the same way by the Chinese consumers or Chinese people. You need to do a lot of marketing. Of course, if you're a startup, depending on sector, might be more or less important. But Chinese people like to work with people who are known, with companies, with brands. Or maybe if you have a paper, like a scientific paper published in a journal, if you have a Nature article, if you have a Cell article, that's a very powerful tool. So just showcase everything you have. Or if you don't have any of this, work on that. Write papers If you have cooperations with universities, just showcase all of this. Then, well, dedicated resources for government affairs. Maybe it's not the case for startups, but in general, as I mentioned before, Chinese government is everywhere, for the bad and for the good. So there must be somebody, let's say, following this area. I would like to say that the perception of European products is still quite, overall, is quite positive. There is a strong association with safety, but these features alone are not enough to sell a product. Don't forget that you will be also competing with entrepreneurs from US, from Korea, from Japan, from Singapore, from Australia. So you always have to think why a Chinese partner wants have to work with you and not others. I have another example which shows the approach of this company. It was not a startup, but it was a very small company, like 12 people. So they had some soil remediation solutions, very innovative solutions apparently. So they were very interested in the Chinese market because this issue is very severe in China. So the approach they chose, they first made an analysis of all the 5-year plans and other development programs. I mentioned at the beginning that China has a plan system. There's industrial policy, so they went to see at the policy level if this solution was actually encouraged. Then they want to analyze the same documents, but at the local level. China, of course, is big. There is a big division of responsibilities among central and local government. Then they came up with a short list of 3 provinces where the issue they want their solution addressed was most severe. And then they, of course, hired a partner, which actually became a partner, but a very senior person. And then this person went, was based in China, went to engage with all, government authorities, participate in scientific events, engage with universities to find potential partners for a project. So eventually they found one. In one city, they launched a demonstration project, which turned out to be very successful, very interesting. And this project was basically scaled up after that. So this is why I mentioned before the project-based cooperation, the Horizon Europe. It could be a very effective point because you get public funding for doing a project which could maybe open many other doors in the future. And you, of course, you have some expenses, but it's not that big. And then if it doesn't work, as soon as the project ends, you're free. You're not stuck in a relationship. So many typical question we get is, okay, how can I meet Chinese partners? Of course, there are different ways. The first recommendation we have is always to get in touch with the in your case, the Portuguese embassy in China, with ISEP, or with other any platforms that exist at the national level, with Portugal in your case. Try also to identify other kind of projects, other cooperative platforms. For instance, I know that between China and Portugal, there is a joint innovation center for advanced materials, which is based within the Zhejiang University in Hangzhou. So, so if you operate in advanced materials, maybe try to reach out to this center, try to talk to Portuguese scientists working there and see if there is a way to, to contribute. Try to identify platforms like this. Other also startup specific platforms. There is Startup Grind, of course, everywhere in the world. They also have chapters in many Chinese cities. There is also other platforms which focus on startup. Maybe they publish information about competitions, about entrepreneurship competitions, or there are a lot in China. And of course, you can go to trade fairs in China. It's an okay way to go to meet people, to understand, to get some feedback about your solution, to see what the others are going. It's very important that you have the right goals for when you go to trade fairs. Don't expect to sign contracts on the spot. Of course, it doesn't happen unless, again, you are SpaceX. But but it could be an effective way. And there are a lot of fairs focused on innovation. There are some which are broader, like innovation, technology, but there are also sector-specific ones. So try to find the one that suits your products, your solutions. Don't forget, it was mentioned also in the previous presentation, there is a very different business culture in China, the way we communicate. Maybe in Southern Europe, we have less problem compared to Northern European people when dealing with Chinese, but still, kind of direct communication or being crystal clear, it's not always happening with Chinese people. Sometimes some things are left kind of open, and it's very indirect communication. So there are many resources online that tells you Chinese business etiquette, how to interact with Chinese people. We also have some webinar recordings on our website, again totally free, which give you an idea of these approaches. So they'll use the same communication style and with Chinese, and listen a lot. Try to study and learn, because they do the same with you. And this comes from Chinese philosophy, by the way. But so yeah. And next slide. I'm going to be quick here, but it's very important that you know who you are dealing with once you find a partner. Let's say sometimes Chinese companies, the structure could be pretty complex. Sometimes you never know who is actually behind a certain company. So you have, I mentioned different rule of the Chinese government in business. Sometimes it's very common that companies behind a company, maybe a shareholder is a state-owned one, or maybe a state-owned investment fund. This is not per se a bad thing. Don't be scared about it. Sometimes actually it could be very useful. It could be it could open many doors. But you should be aware of this. You should be aware that their objectives might not necessarily be aligned with the objectives of other, maybe private shareholders. So sometimes the structures are very, very complex, or maybe sometimes even the manager, the person from the company, your partner, your general manager might have different hats. They might be the general manager or the legal representative of the company, but they might also have other roles which you don't know. So try to, of course, you can work with law firms, but you can also, there are some platforms, make some research online. We can also do this for you eventually for free. Very simple, informal background checks. So it's very important that you know who you are dealing with, because your partners will know everything about you. And if you don't do the same with them, you are in a vulnerable position. Let's say there should be symmetry of knowledge and information between the two. This is the next slide is maybe it's not that relevant at this stage for you, but just for you to know that the company stamps, any contract, any legal document in China must be stamped with of course with a Chinese stamp, and there are very strict rules on stamps in China. So in this slide here, if you ever see stamps like this, or similar, of course, be aware that these are wrong. These have no value at all in China. The legal stamps look like this, those in the slide. There might still be some minor differences, but keep in mind again that company shops in China are very strictly regulated. They must be round shaped. They must be red ink. Sometimes they have the red star in the middle. Sometimes they don't, but they generally look like this. And last last slide for this part is that everything I mentioned. I like to joke by saying that everything I mentioned now so far is the easy part. The hard part begins once you actually are in the market. Don't be scared, of course, but But this is to say that actually, even before you go to the Chinese market, it is very important that you have a very clear IP protection strategy. Before you go to a trade fair, you should register your trademark, but also your patents. This must be done way before you go to China, because IP infringement is very common. Bad faith registration of your trademark, of your patents, is very common. And keep in mind that having a patent in Portugal or in other European countries or in the US doesn't give you protection in China. So I'm not an IP expert. There is another project funded by the European Union, which is called China IP SME Help Desk, which, like us, does everything for free, provide you information assistance for free on China IP issues. So be very clear about it before you go to China. Once you're in China, remember, I also mentioned before, Chinese people like to work with the other companies who are known, or so you have to have a lot of social media presence. You need to do a lot of marketing. You need to do a lot of things like this. This is extremely important, even if it's not your core business. But without this, it's very difficult that you will be able to meet other clients. There are also a lot of requirements in terms of expectations in terms of customer service, after sales service. So you will have to do a lot of things like this. So don't just focus on your product development, product improvement. You should also have maybe hire an intern to do your social media. You must do something on social media. And also, I mentioned China, networking in China is very important. Try to go to scientific conferences. Sometimes they issue calls for papers, for giving presentations. Respond to those. Make yourself known to the scientific community, because professors in China have different hats, and they work in universities. They may also have roles in private companies. They may also have roles in the government. So try to engage with this. And again, if you have papers, if you have a high impact factor, you just showcase it very aggressively. This is very important in China. And the last, depending on the sector you operate, but there are very strict cybersecurity, ICT, data transfer regulations in China, which might affect your product. So essentially, if you operate in certain sectors such as energy, life sciences, you might not be able to transfer your data, which is generated in China. You might not be able to transfer it to Portugal, or maybe you might be able to do so, but you have to go through some prior approval. So keep this in mind. And if you want to know more about that, you can reach me out in the next stage. So a bit of takeaways here. China is changing a lot. It's not growing as fast as it was before. There's a lot of youth unemployment. Many young people are actually preferring government jobs, while until a few years ago they would all be entrepreneurs. But there's still very vibrant entrepreneurship startup system. In Europe, we're also changing a lot. There is a new commission now. There are trade frictions going, and we have things like economic security and things like that, which might affect, let's say, our overall relationship. China is a very important market. There are many opportunities. You can make big money in China. You can achieve societal impact, but it's very hard to grasp this. You need to you must have very clear strategy, a strong business case, and you have to have very also resources, both financial resources, but also human resources. Being in China allows you to learn new industry trends, new innovations. Now many innovations are born in China, are generated in China. And if you are there, you learn these trends, these new innovations before the others. And you might be able to incorporate these innovations in other countries, in Portugal as well. I always bring the case of this. There was this French entrepreneur based in Shanghai since 2004. And he was, I would say, one of the pioneers in using QR codes in Europe. Now in Europe, QR codes are everywhere. But this guy from 2011 already started to use QR codes on their machines in France, because of course they had learned it from China, and they thought it was very, very interesting. So this guy since 2011 was using QR codes in France for doing maintenance of their machinery. So it's very good to be in China for this. And don't forget that China also has very good infrastructure. It has very solid trade relationship with neighboring countries. So being in China maybe also allows you to access other markets, Korea, Vietnam. And there are also many examples of foreign companies that are based in China, they produce in China, but they sell zero in China. They only sell to Vietnam or Thailand or Korea or Japan. It's very important that you are fully aware of the risks and how to mitigate them. You should remember that there is a very intense competition, not only from domestic companies, but also from other international companies, Japanese, Australian, American. Think long term, act gradually, and then you should always have some legal safeguard. You should always seek legal advice because maybe you might risk losing IP or your company, the Chinese market for your company. It's very important. These things happen on a daily basis. So this was the last slide. Maybe just another quick word about us, the USME Center. I mentioned we have many services. We also have a self-diagnosis tool, which is a quiz, let's say, that you can take that helps you understand a little bit, your knowledge gaps with Chinese market. It also provides you, resources we have for increasing, let's say, your understanding of different aspects of the market. If you have any questions, let us know anytime. We also usually publish calls for speakers, surveys, or calls for case studies or to our socials, LinkedIn, WeChat. You are welcome to engage with this. And then this is maybe more for the institutional partners. If you have any topics in the future, of course, let us know. We will be happy to do basically what we're doing today, but on other topics. So that was it for me. This is my email. You're very welcome to reach out to us because we are here for you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alessio, for your presentation, and Luis as well. I think that your presentation were really complete. So now let's open the Q&A session. We already have one question from a startup. Alessio, I'm going to translate it to you. So what is the maturity of consumption of sustainable products by the end consumer? What do you have to say about?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. So the question is, what is the maturity of the consumption of sustainable products by the end consumer?
Okay, it's a difficult question, which I guess it depends a lot on the sector and what you're doing. But I would say that there is growing awareness everywhere, especially in big cities. For instance, in the food industry, there is many consumers choose recycled food content materials, recycled plastics, or maybe they're willing to pay the 50 cents more to have the recycled kind of food container. Many designers are also offering clothes, textiles, bags made of recycled products. I think there is overall much stronger awareness. Now, I don't know if this justifies, it's still like something that like the decisive, the determinant factor for leading their purchase decisions. Maybe they still purchase a product based on other factors, and maybe the sustainability aspects adds on the value, but I don't think it's the first factor. I think overall we're going into that direction. Also in the industrial sector, recycling of waste and a lot of things. It's circular economy is becoming, there is much stronger awareness, and it's growing, but maybe not as fast as maybe Europe or other countries, but it will get there.
Thank you, Alexio. And how about you, Luis?
I would definitely agree. I think sustainability is not yet the major factor, and it would also depend on the sector. For instance, if you take fashion, I would say that sustainable fashion, if you go to Shanghai Fashion Week, sustainable fashion is a major aspect, but it's still in the aspect of introducing it to the market. And you see that in several sectors. Also, I would say the integration of sustainability as an add-on to previous products. So I would not say it's comparable to what especially Europe is doing in terms of sustainability. But yeah, I agree. We are heading there, and China, especially the major cities, are transforming themselves towards sustainability. So as you see in the automotive industry and how they adjusted to ecological conscientization, I think those aspects are very important for the consumer, but not yet the major factor of decision for them.
Okay, thank you. And Alex, you mentioned the call for proposals 5 regarding sustainability of Horizon Europe. So do you think that the Chinese companies are more willing to take part as associated partners in this kind of projects? They are more and more willing to take part in European projects?
Well, I'm not sure if it's more and more. For sure, if you're in this field, you will know that until the previous framework work program, they were eligible to get direct EU money. Now they can't. They have to pay their own expenses. So probably they're not as keen as before. But in general, I would say that any forms of cooperation on R&D, on demonstration, I think overall they're very eager to have international collaborations. I think, if you see, if you're interested in Horizon Europe, you can see there is the Cordis database, which is a database of the EU where you can find all kind of project, and you can just make a very simple search on Horizon Europe. You filter Chinese participants, and you will see there are almost 200 Chinese entities currently participating in Horizon Europe. So I think there is interest, and it's encouraged by the Chinese administrations. Of course, there might be requirements in terms of how IP. Well, not there might be. There are requirements on how IP is owned, is managed. You have to be very careful there, but I think it's provides very good opportunities.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. So do local governments, like, for instance, municipalities in Portugal are not sure which... let's imagine that the municipalities in China, do they have responsibility in climate sustainability? How is the B2G landscape working on this matter?
Yeah. Again, climate sustainability is a very broad topic, but in many let's say sectors, the responsibility lies at the municipal level or even at the district level. For instance, we are working on waste, on two reports on waste disposal, waste recycling, and for hazardous waste, it's more the provinces, let's say the provincial administrations. They oversee all the management of the hazardous waste. They issue licenses for operators to be able to have operations in this area. But maybe for food and beverage waste, for household waste, for waste sorting, it's the municipalities. So it depends on what sectors you're looking at. But in general, the central government let's say paves the way, let's say indicates the directions, the goals, and then each local government formulate its own plan based on their own situation, their own priorities, still aligned with the central government directions, but they have their own localized version of it, which might be very different from one province to province or from one city to a city. So I would say they have a very big role, and at the end of the day, you always have to remember that local officials in China have KPIs. They every year, if they want to advance careers, they have to meet certain KPIs, and these KPIs could be very different. They include how many foreign companies they have, how many taxes they pay, and there are also some climate related KPIs. So the answer to this question is yes.
I would also say that local governments, in terms of implementing climate-related policies, they are not afraid of testing. of testing it for 1-2 years, and if it doesn't work, they completely withdraw it. You saw it in Shanghai the first time I was here. They tried to do recycling. You were talking about waste management. They tried to implement a recycle-related policy that didn't work. Withdrew it, and then they start from scratch back again with a different term. So the local municipalities, in terms of the municipality of Shanghai or if provincial level, are much easier to work with than I would say central government, including their joint programs. So I think companies will find much easier conversations with the more local you go. So I would say, yeah, they have responsibility. They test it, they try it. Shanghai, for instance, is a good example because they are aiming to be the world leading smart city. So, but it's a smart city in a transversal way. So they try to do it across all sectors, including, of course, climate sustainability, ESG, which is something that you hear a lot about here in Shanghai. So yeah, and other different sectors as well.
Maybe if I may add something else, I mentioned representation different, that there is a very different role of the government in business. I think also the local government as, let's say, a multiplier. Sometimes they will bring maybe a local company to work with you. Sometimes they cannot pay for your solution, but maybe they bring a local company that does it for you. So think about this. They open a lot of doors, and maybe because the same guy also has a role in the company, or maybe they have an advisory role for the government. So I really encourage you to have a very active outreach to local administrations in China.
Thank you for your answers. And you mentioned a lot of advices for what startups should do. What do you think it's the main errors that startups should avoid based in your experience with other startups that already try to explore this market?
Okay, I think there was a Spanish guy we used to have. Actually, we have a case study on this company, this entrepreneur, on our website, and you're very welcome to see it. They did some, since I think in 2017 or 16, they were among the first to do AI subtitles for live presentations. So I think this guy at the beginning was very focused on finding investors, participating to this competition, to get some VC, to do pitches, but finding clients was a kind of a secondary importance. It was more about getting the funding and things. So I think at some point this guy told me, I think you should work on finding clients, and that's the most important priority, because at that time there was a lot of VC investment in China. There were a lot of investment, private, public. So everybody wanted to get a piece of the cake. So I would say focus on your business case. Improve your business case, and yeah, I think that is the most important thing, because at the end of the day you must have a business case, very strong one.
I would put it as coming to China without being prepared whatsoever, or treating China as a comfort market. I would say those two aspects are usually the main reason why we are like in the urgency mode trying to help companies here. Sometimes they forget, oh, I'm going to a meeting and I don't have a translator. I think you really should have thought of that before, because if you should at least discuss with the Chinese part, do you have a translator? Can you provide one? Do you speak English? I think these basic questions eventually, if you do not prepare for it, you might enter panic mode and try to see yourselves forced into what's the proxy solution for problems that is not optimal, and it's only going to leave a very bleak image in the Chinese counterpart. So I think prepare very nicely, use the advice that Alessio gave you, that I gave you as well. That's a good base. Check what information is available online regarding business culture, regarding the ideology. Investigate the company that you're dealing with, the region, the connections to the Chinese government, if there are, and at least these are the major aspects. And before coming to China, and get ready to come to China, because eventually you will need to come to China and do some prospection, do some visits, do some on face-to-face meetings.
Maybe another thing, if I may add, because thinking again about the example I provided, the Spanish entrepreneur, he also shared that during many of these pitches, one question he would receive very frequently is, you are a foreigner, you come here, you pretend to give us a solution, you pretend to know China, but questions like this, which might get you very, very upset. So some personal kind of things. Be also prepared for this, especially if you're an entrepreneur, young entrepreneur. They might say, okay, you're here, you want to make money, in 2 years you leave, why I should trust you? Things that this is also something you should take into account.
Okay, and how about the participation in international events or conferences or fairs in China? Do you believe it's a good first approach to explore the market? And do you recommend as well having a translator when the startups goes for the first time, for instance, for a conference in China?
Okay, I'll go first. Yes, I mentioned it, I think, a couple of times during my presentation. I think this is a very powerful approach. Now, it depends what you do, but if you are a technology company, if you have an interest in, let's say, scientific kind of foundation, you should go to scientific conferences where there are professors, where there are academics, where there are also engineers. Go there if you have papers. It's a very powerful approach, and usually translators are offered by these events. Usually you don't have to take care of it, but if you want to really be sure about the quality of of the translation, maybe bring your own one. But in general, I think showing things is much more powerful, especially in China, than just saying things. So there was this company I mentioned we did this business mission last month. There was this company that has a very interesting solution, recycling of plastics, but based on some biological approaches. They put enzymes into the waste. I don't know the technology now, but we organized a few B2B sessions for introductions, and this lady went on the stage with actually the products recycled to show them, and they also had a nature paper, and they put on the screen, the nature article. This is very cool. Everybody in the audience was taking pictures, and so yes, go to these events, especially scientific ones, because professors in China often are very powerful key for you, because they have different hats.
And including in this protecting event that I mentioned, the program, the companies are reviewed in China by professors. So I would agree with that. So they are like experts reviewing the product and see how feasible they are to the Chinese market. So I think this first contact, or at least this feedback, is very useful. If you are talking about heading to a trade fair just to make some contacts, it is a bit, it would be a little difficult in the first instance, because a lot of companies join these trade fairs in procurement, so to supply, to find eventual buyers. So I think the level that you would meet there without any preparation would not be sufficient, or would not be satisfactory for the Portuguese company. I think here some homework would be needed. Trying to get in touch beforehand with the company that you want to meet with. If you're just doing a visit to the trade fair just to get familiar with it, try to analyze the floor plan, try to see which companies might be more interesting to you, which ones are, just because in China also trade fairs, even the ones that are not as much relevant, are quite sizable. So it might take at least 1 day, 2 days, 3 days to visit the entirety of the trade fair. So be aware of that and be prepared to do some homework before you head into a trade fair.
Thank you so much. And we have one more question from the audience. So which region of China would you advise as a software as a service company that offers pollution monitoring using Earth observation, for instance, satellite images? peptides in space. So which region would you recommend to address first?
Can you repeat the sector? Software as a service, then what else?
Yes, so it is a software as a service company that offers pollution monitoring using Earth observation. So using, let's say, space technologies applicable to the Earth.
Okay, if you expect an answer like go to this province or that other province, unfortunately I cannot give it because this requires some study, of course. So I cannot respond to this, unfortunately. But what I would maybe say is that this is a very, let's say, high advanced technology, very strategic one. At the central level, it's encouraged. So if it's encouraged at the central level, it means that everywhere in China will be encouraged. So any all regions and cities will be very happy to have you there. What I think you should, of course, you should maybe analyze the plans of some of these regions. But I think what is most important is to find the cluster, the industry, let's say, ecosystem of your partners, of your suppliers that are there. So you should identify which other companies does they do this in China, what suppliers do you need, and maybe that should be a decisive a very important factor of your decisions. Not much about the incentives of the support. You will get that from basically everyone, but that will end at some point. You have to find some the ecosystem there. But I don't know which province is strong in this.
Yeah, indeed. That's what I was mentioning during my presentation. I think all ecosystems work with the technological aspects in one way or another. What varies is the governmental priorities. So this would need to see which governments give more importance to this case pollution monitoring, which is a very specific sector. I mean, you could say Shenzhen is a very technological area, so that might be a good fit for the company. But that's not necessarily true, because other cities in China, like Shanghai or Beijing or Hangzhou, could be a good fit as well. So I think this needs a bit of, as I was mentioning before, a bit of homework, doing a bit of investigation into which ecosystem, which potential partners, which potential programs are available in each area, and see how can they suit. Also, I would maybe also be concerned about which software do you use, but I mean that's a different conversation, and that we can discuss that in parallel. And how can that fit into China, given that a lot of platforms in China are banned, are blocked.
Okay, thank you so much. So maybe the advice now is, so if other startups and even this one has further questions, maybe they can reach to you directly and see particularly each case to see how to go and how to approach the next steps. So
Right.
of course we are going to share your presentations and your contact details to the audience and to the other companies interested in these markets. So I would like to finish this webinar by now, thanking you so much for your availability and for your really complete presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you very much. Have a great day and weekend.